Welcome, everybody, to Drive To Win. It's a brand new podcast all about the Formula One lifestyle right here from the Wynn in Las Vegas. I'm Justin Bell. I'll be your host for the next few months until the end of the season. And of course, it's all about Formula One here in Las Vegas. And we're going to kick it off with a show that I think is pretty cool. We got McLaren boss Zak Brown on, and then ex-Formula One driver Stefan Johansson, really bringing the show coming together. But before we do, a little bit about me. I am a second-generation race car driver. My father, Derek Bell, actually raced for Ferrari in Formula One back in the early 70s, went on to win Le Mans 5 times. That inspired me to get involved. I went on to race, as you can see, a beautiful Harrods McLaren. We finished third at Le Mans on Father's Day in 1995. That was a big part of my career. I also went on as part of the Dodge Viper program to win the 1997 FIA GT2 World Championship. And then, of course, the 1998 Le Mans 24 Hours. I've stayed in the sport since then. It's a huge part of my life. I understand it, I live it, I breathe it. And for the past 15 years, I've been a big part of the TV broadcast world here in the United States, working not just for Speed Channel at the time and then Fox Sports. And then I got into the podcast and broadcast world myself, which led me right to this path here. The philosophy for the show is pretty simple. The Wynn have an enormous investment and a passion for all things automotive and racing. If you walk anywhere in this casino, you can see the latest Koenigsegg. You can see right next door to me 2 former Formula One McLaren's. Every part of this property has got some sort of motorsport angle as they gear up for the race, the 22nd Grand Prix of the season later in the year. The concept for the show really was we have that amazing event to hold on to look forward to, but how are we going to get there with the passion, enthusiasm, this explosion of interest and all things Formula One through the Drive to Survive phenomenon? I think everything here in America is about the entertainment of the sport, the personalities of the driver, the brilliance of the show. It is one of the most sexy sports globally. And now you have 3 races here in the United States. So 2023 is really promising to be the biggest Formula One season in history, with a record number 23 races, the 22nd being here right in Las Vegas. And what a year it has been so far. Now, I was intending to start today's show reflecting on what would have been the Italian Grand Prix at Imola, but it's been widely publicized, and we'll get into it a little bit later. They had a tragedy, really, in the region around the racetrack. It was pretty much a disaster ecologically and economically, and Formula One made exactly the right decision early enough not to go there, because believe me, when Ferrari comes into town, it's not just thousands, tens of thousands of people working in the industry. It's also the supporting industry around it. And then, of course, 150,000 rabid fans descending on would have put too much of a pressure on the local environment. So the right decision was made, although to our loss as viewers. So I thought I'd do a quick reflection on the season so far. Obviously, coming into this year, such a scene of Red Bull dominance, which has continued. As we sit, every race so far, really, Red Bull have been the leading story. And you've got the outrageous, behind-the-wheel, flamboyant talent of Max Verstappen. You see what he's doing with the car, and you see the way Christian Horner and the Red Bull team have really been, pushing him as their prodigy. But you've got Perez, who's right there, and he has shown it by winning 2 races, that he is an equal talent. And I think that's really going to be the theme of the year, and one that we're really going to follow, and some of our guests are going to be able to shed a lot of light into, because these are young, super talented, super hungry drivers that are sporting athletes that have all had their own path to the top, the pinnacle of the sport, and they want to beat each other more than you can even imagine. But sometimes the guy they want to beat is also sharing a motorhome with them, sharing a debrief with them. So it is something remarkable. It's a unique dynamic to motorsports when you can have 2 of the world's top drivers in basically the same race suit with equal equipment. And I think you're going to start to see a little bit of, in my opinion, you're going to start to see some unusual dynamics between Verstappen and Perez, because Verstappen is, a god behind the wheel, but Perez, rightly so, thinks he is too. So driver pairings as vibrant as I can remember. Now, something that's made us very excited as fans, and I know anyone that's followed the social media in Formula One is a huge part of this movement, is seeing Fernando Alonso in his new rider Aston Martin. He's been on the podium all the way through the beginning of the season, and just to see the joy and vibrancy and passion and renewed enthusiasm. He'll say it never went away, but only when you get a car. And he's saying that his current car is as good as anything and as fast as anything he's ever had in Formula One. And after such a long career, I think we're going to see not just podiums, but you could see a win come up, Fernando, this year. Now, of course, Ferrari, who doesn't love Ferrari? We're going to talk to Stefan a bit about Ferrari and what it means later. But my father raced for Ferrari. I remember that. And I remember when I was 16 years old, I met Enzo Ferrari. And to me, it was like meeting the Pope. It was perhaps the most meaningful, significant, emotional moment of my life, meeting someone who was such an icon. And he passed away only about a year later. But that was firmly seared in my life, in my mind. And just being there. So I have this sort of family attachment to Ferrari, but you can see some pace. Charles Leclerc is right out there in qualifying. He has the ability to get the car around one lap. Last year, Ferrari continually made bad calls. They had bad luck, bad calls, and some bad driver errors. And it really did cost them that shot. Even though they were, leading the championship for a while last year, they had a shot at maintaining it, and the pressure, I think, was too much. This year, they're a little bit behind where they should be, but around one lap. And I think we're going to see it this weekend in Monaco. Charles Leclerc is probably the fastest man in Formula One. And Carlos Sainz, I'm a big fan of his. I felt he a little underrated at times during his career, but right now, I think we're seeing him at his best. But of course, as a Brit, Lewis Hamilton, he's the guy. George Russell is right there with him. Lewis is, quite honestly, one of the titans behind the wheel that we've ever seen. The sort of talent that comes along only once in a generation. We're lucky enough in Formula One to have a few of those guys right now. But make no bones about it, Mercedes with Lewis Hamilton and George Russell will get back up to the top. They keep nudging their way there. George is fourth in the championship, which is incredible, ahead of Lewis. And remember what I'm saying, psychology of drivers will emerge as the season goes along. And some, while they're fast behind the wheel, just the sheer youth that they have, I think a lot gets to do with the way they were brought up, the way that the family structure they have, their resilience, because when you're up against your main rival, who is in the same motorhome as you, metaphorically speaking, it's a tough one. So let's see who will be the smartest and the strongest there. But the rest is really the best of the rest. And we have just some incredible teams out there. AlphaTauri, Haas, Alpha. Obviously, it's not about money. It's not about resources. They all have such passion. Every single member of those teams wants to go on and get their guys to the front. And that's one of the things we will dive into a little bit later during the season, is maybe talking to some of the lead mechanics, because I'll tell you, those guys, while the drivers go home for dinner and with their beautiful partners, the mechanics are there all night, especially if a mistake was made. And those guys, to me, are the rock stars, the unseen rock stars of the paddock. But there are two names, and I talk about it, I want to talk about it a bit later, hopefully with Zach, is racing is a roller coaster, and there can only be one winner. But even some of the biggest teams, some of the biggest brands in motorsport, and I'm talking about Williams and McLaren, are languishing towards the middle, towards the back of the Formula One grid right now. How and why? That is a question that, as a layman, as a bystander, you'd have to ask yourself. But how is that the case? It really is about direction. The regulations are so tough, and they basically have to predict where they want their car to be without knowing at the beginning of the season which direction within the very tight restrictions on the regulations. And it's down to interpretation. Have they adopted the right philosophy? And McLaren have admitted that they haven't gone the right way. They knew it right at the beginning of the year. And Williams, well, maybe we'll have to ask them. But certainly, again, let's watch this space. You're going to see McLaren come up towards the mid-season, towards the end. And Williams, everybody wants Frank Williams' old team to get itself back up to the top. Though, just seeing, I got suddenly had flashbacks of, when it was the Rothmans car with Damon Hill. Those were great days, beautiful cars, and it was great to see a British team at the top. A long way to go towards the end of the season, and it's going to ramp up in excitement. We really want to be a big part of that with you. And here at the Wynn, that's the best way I can imagine to round off the Formula One season here in the United States of America, because Formula One in Las Vegas is going to be massive. I walked around this morning. I went down to the edge of before too many of the tourists were out there, and I just stood on the edge of the track, what will be the track, and I looked up and down going, I cannot believe they'll probably be doing 180 miles an hour before they hit the brakes right here in front of the Wynn. And I go, the tourists are going to be walking around. It is going to be a sight to behold. And Formula One's investment in Las Vegas is unprecedented. They're currently building this 20-acre paddock pit complex, which is actually within walking distance from here where I'm sitting. And it's state-of-the-art. It's the first time Formula One have actually invested like this in the infrastructure of a Grand Prix and where they have ownership. And just think to yourself what the economics are of buying 20 acres on the Las Vegas Strip and then building it. They're probably up towards about $500 million in total. And it's going to be open to the public, I think, in between the races, because it's going to be such the epicenter of like Formula One's activities here from the Formula One perspective. But the rest of it is, of course, down to what's happening here at the Wynn. The Wynn are one of the major partners in the Las Vegas Grand Prix. And as the track winds its way around, it's 3.8 miles, 17 corners. And I really urge you to follow along and see how this event comes together. And I'll be on the ground helping you with that. But a word that doesn't really go with Formula One too often is the Concours d'Elegance world. It's a big thing that I'm involved with. And the Wynn, the Concours at the Wynn, will be taking part again this year on the Saturday before Grand Prix week. And that is November 11th. And as you can see, these beautiful images of last year's event. Car Concours is the opportunity for some of the biggest collectors in the world to showcase the cars from history, all the way through sometimes from the pre and post-war. And I'm not talking about more recent wars. I'm talking about the Second World War and these cars that have challenged and evolved culture and pop culture and almost our automotive history. Some of them will be here. It's like a kaleidoscope of the history of the automobile and racing will all be on the golf course, again, just behind where I'm sitting on November the 11th. And I'm involved. I'm going to actually be the host of the MC of that event. And what a way to kick off this incredible week of racing here in Las Vegas. So it'll start with the Concours at the Wynn and then end with the Grand Prix just a few days later. So a lot going on. I hope you are going to enjoy the show. I'm tremendously excited about it. Of course, Imola not happening last weekend means that we'll be back next week after the Monaco Grand Prix. But we're going to kick it off with a guy that I really do think is one of the most influential men in the Formula One paddock, Zak Brown. So as you can see, a lot of reason to not just be in Las Vegas in a few months' time, but especially here at the Wynn. Well, my first guest is, in my opinion, one of the most influential men in motorsports today. In fact, about 12 years ago, one of the British newspapers said, is Zak Brown the new Bernie Ecclestone? Well, he didn't go on to fill that role, but he is CEO of McLaren, born in California, now known for his role with McLaren Racing, but he actually raced for 10 years as a professional driver. And as you can see, a young man with lots of aspiration, but then realized that maybe his career was better suited to the management of finding sponsors. He became literally the textbook of how you look for sponsorship and started JMI Marketing, which went on to be the largest, most influential motorsport marketing company in the world, which he then sold a few years later, which afforded him the privilege to buy some of the incredible cars that he had. But he had insight as a driver. He knew the business side of it and was perfectly positioned to go on for his new job at McLaren. Very excited to bring Zak Brown on the show. Zak, wonderful to have you here as my first guest.
Yeah, I'm good. I had a little bit of dental work done this morning, so if I slur at any point, it's not because I've been drinking.
But you could have been drinking because you had a weekend off. How did that go?
Yeah, fair enough. Well, kind of a weekend off.
Yeah. Was it, I mean, that's obviously the big thing, with Imola not going forward. I mean, we'll get into the logistics in a minute, but I just can't even imagine, just even on a personal level, suddenly going, wow, I've got 5 days. I mean, I know you're so busy that I'm sure the workload just slid in there, but did you manage to make it home and spend time with the family?
I actually never made it out there because we made the call, I think it was on the Wednesday, and I was going to go on the Thursday, but the team was out there. It was obviously massively unfortunate for the country. Forget about the race. There's always another race, but the floods were terrible, and I'm glad we made the call early. I'm not sure previous Formula One wouldn't have maybe waited a little bit longer, but I think the decision that we made was, even if the race could go forward, which was very iffy, do you want all the fire units, ambulances, police that help put on a race, should they really be diverted from what was way more important, which is help getting the city back in order? So it was actually, that's what drove the decision, more so than do we think the track was going to be ready, was, it just didn't feel appropriate.
Yeah, I mean, it was, and it came out early, as you said, that was good. But I was just thinking, your freight, your logistics, your advanced crew, they're already there on the ground for all the teams.
Oh, yeah. We were
crazy.
Ready to go racing. Cars were unpacked. Hospitality was up, and, presented a little bit of a challenge tearing down because, of course, we're Monaco this weekend. So it's a circus that moves by the minute, by the second. And anytime you have something that disrupts that, could have been tricky, but no, everything is all systems go for Monaco.
A little bit of insider information, if you can, just give us an idea of the logistics, because you see sometimes on Instagram shots of the containers, the paddock being folded up after the race, and I've been around racing long enough to know what it looks like at a normal sports car race when they pack up. But with your hospitality and everything, just from a logistical personnel side of things, how was that? How many people are involved? How much tons of freight?
It's about 125 people at a race weekend. So, and everything was built, the hospitality, which takes a couple days to tear down. We're in there usually Monday or Tuesday, getting set up. With this being a European race, it's all by trucks. So that made it maybe a little bit easier than if we were working to a deadline to get everything back into sea freights or on freights to get back on planes. So I think it was a little bit easier that it was Europe.
Yeah. Obviously, on a personal level, for everyone in the team, I'm sure, as well as the fans, yes, it was totally the right decision and force majeure and everything, but missing the Italian Grand Prix is one of the ones you go, the food's great, it's just the fans, the tifosi are great. You must love going to that race.
It's an awesome race, and we've had a podium there the last couple of years, so it's also a track we go well at, so we're just going to imagine we had a podium.
I totally agree with that. But of course, on that subject, you've been widely reported in the press that you got updates coming for the car, and your engineering team everybody's working so hard, and I know you made many sort of personnel changes and infrastructure changes. Monaco's not the best place to debut probably some of the stuff you were going to try, is it?
No, you're going to see it kind of be sprinkled in through Montreal, Austria, Silverstone. Monaco isn't the best place. Imola would have been good. We've got some small updates, but our more major stuff comes in the next couple races. So that keeps us on track. Monaco is a bit of an outlier as a circuit. I think we should go all right there, but we are off to a slow start this season. We knew we would be, hence the changes in the offseason. We had a sense late last year things weren't developing at the pace that we wanted to. And, you tend to get a gut feel for things, and then you see the results about 6 months later. So my gut feel was we weren't going where we needed to go second half of last year. And sure enough, that proved right at the start of the year. And now I would say things are feeling pretty good, really good with our new structure and our new people, not of which have all joined, but many have. But I think there'll be that 6-month lag where, however you feel today, you're going to see it in 6 months. Fortunately, I feel good today. So I think we'll start to see those results come in the second half of the year.
That's the thing about motorsport that, there's so many new fans to it, as we know. We talk about all that in a minute, but you and I know, and anyone that's been involved, that it is this roller coaster. Every team on the grid, from Ferrari to McLaren to Williams to they've all had those eras, that phase when it just did, as you say, implementation of new technology, restructuring. It's never about the money. It's always about just that wave, the sort of the tide rising or falling. I remember when Mika Hakkinen was having a bad year, everyone was writing him off as a driver. I'm going, he hasn't forgotten how to drive, guys. You know what I mean? He's going to be. It's the same. McLaren hasn't forgotten how to win races. You're going to be there. You're going to be there. How is it for you in keeping the commercial motivation going as well as inside the team?
Oh, commercially, we're doing great, but we're here to win. So as are our partners, but they understand the journey that we're on. Since we got started here in 2017, we've had a great run back to finally winning a race, and then last year we had our challenges with our driver lineup, which was well documented, so to speak, well reported, but bumbling underneath that. I was not happy with the pace or lack of pace of development. Now we've got a great driver lineup, so I think we've solved that issue, and now we need a faster car. As you say, we've got close to 1,000 people, of which 900 of them have won races before, so they know what they're doing. And, we're behind on our technology infrastructure investments. We're now getting caught up. Things like our wind tunnel, our new manufacturing unit, our simulator are all coming online the second half of this year. We've got Andrea Stella, who I'm very impressed with running the team, and some new recruits, which will bring some added dimensions to our thinking, and then our infrastructure all coming online. So it is all kind of coming together at the end of the year. We're already working on the 24 car, so I wouldn't say we're at full fighting strength for our 24 car because that's starting to happen now. But come 25, I think we'll have everything in place. So I'd like to think we can get back to a 21 type season next year, 5 podiums, a win, a pole. We were running at the front. And then 25, I think we take another step forward. We should hopefully be winning races. And once you're winning races, you're in with a shout at competing for the championship. And 26 is a reset. So 3 years feels like a long way away. But when you kind of look at the path to get there, it's actually going to move quite quick. And I think as long as we are progressing through that journey, everyone will be happy and right along with us.
Yeah, especially as a driver, because I was talking to some people this weekend about Formula One drivers, and as though they were describing 40-year-old seasoned veterans. I'm going, you're talking about 21-year-old kids. They 10 years ago is nothing to you and I. 10 years ago to them, they were in middle school. And you think about 2025 for them, that's a long way off to a Lando or an Oscar. Does your role sometimes have to be, it's team manage, your overall CEO, but with all your experience, father figure too, giving them the confidence, showing them the plan, laying it out for them? Because I imagine that they want to win, right?
It's a bit, 100%. It's kind of a bit of everything. I think Oscar's at a stage where, he's a rookie, so he's got a lot of time on his side, and quite patient from that standpoint. Lando would be winning races and competing for the championship in a championship caliber car. He knows that. We know that. I think the world knows that. But he signed up for this journey, and McLaren's family for him. And I think it will be so much sweeter to win in a McLaren because he'll know what contribution he made towards that versus maybe getting into a race-winning car today. Now, that being said, if we're not on a path to giving him a race-winning car, I wouldn't expect him to stick around forever. But he signed through 25, and we're all frustrated with the start of the year, but we're all working together to power through it. And I think that, it's kind of like IndyCar. We didn't qualify at Indianapolis in 2019. And, here we were at the weekend, the most competitive four-car effort. And that feels that much more rewarding than if we just walked into a front-running effort. So I think there's an element of we want to do this together and be along for the ride together. And I think the milk, so to speak, will taste greater if we can pull this off together.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. And I imagine that, like, for your Formula One drivers, I wonder what they think about your American, the American side of things. I mean, 4 cars in the top 8, 9 at Indies for qualifying. I mean, it's a pretty dominant showing. And as I heard you say on a podcast yesterday, I mean, there are a lot of cars. There's another 10 cars that can win it. But for you, I mean, knowing Indy's going on, it must make them feel, you said the word McLaren family, and way back when, Dad was involved with McLaren, back in the day, McLaren felt like a family, and it does now. But boy, it's a big difference for when, your predecessor, the Ron Dennis era, when you couldn't even cut a corner or walk across the grass. I mean, I was just thinking this morning, in this era of social media transparency, everything's laid out there. I mean, he's not in his grave, but I'm sure he'd turn in it if he was, right? I mean, this is what a different world you have to deal with. It's wide open, laid out.
Yeah, I think motor racing and sports, all the different eras are awesome, and it's hard to compare them, but we are in a digital age. We are in an era of total transparency. We're in an age of total visibility. And I like it. I like sharing with the fans. I remember growing up, I'm still a huge fan of motor racing. Might be the biggest fan in the world of motor racing. And I love it. And I feel like part of my job is to share this wonderful sport and McLaren with our fans around the world.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of putting it, because you are a fan. I mean, I see you in historic racing cars, some of your collection in a race suit that tracks sort of all, especially here in North America, the revival and, in Europe. You love it. You never lost that. You raced for all those years. I think that's an important ingredient in the paddock. And actually, Jeremiah, my producer, just said before you went on, he said, I wonder if, does every person in charge of a Formula One team have a racing pedigree? And I said, you know what? Not as many as you think. Do you think that stands you in good stead in all areas of the sport?
I think it does. I think it gives you some street credibility, if you'd like, with your racing team, with the drivers. I think that's one of the areas that I've got a great working relationship with the drivers, and I golf with them, and we do simulator, and we drive some historic cars. So I've got a really good relationship with them, and I think I've been around racing long enough to know what a good team looks like and a bad team looks like, and I've seen drivers mishandled and handled properly. And so just over that 30 years of experience I've been around racing, like you have, you end up just kind of picking up what a successful racing team looks like. I'm not very technical, so most of the other team bosses come from a bit more of an engineering type background, and I'm one of the few racers. And I think it does help.
Of course, when we see you in social media or the news more, it's so much of it is a side of the job that you knew you were taking on, but you are CEO of a massive, billion-dollar enterprise with thousands of employees. The politics of the sport, we hear the edge of it. And, when I saw you at the Peterson about a month ago, you talked about it. The politics of the sport, do you think it's just because it's big business, or is it Formula One in particular? Because you do have regulations that affect outcome of races, of careers. First of all, did you have any clue that it was going to be this much of a political workload? I mean, sustainability reports, those are words you wouldn't have known 5 years ago.
Yeah, it's a very political sport. Formula One more so than any other. I think it's because it's big business and you're trying to get a competitive advantage everywhere. I think it can go too far at times. I kind of look at IndyCar racing, and it's kind of one big happy family, which I think is also to the extreme. We are trying to kind of beat each other on track, but Formula One is pretty brutal, and at times I think too brutal, but that's how the game is played. I remember Martin Brundle, in my previous life when I had my sports marketing agency, I worked with all the teams, so I was a bit Switzerland. And I remember Martin Brundle, who's a good buddy, coming up to me at Spa in first year, and he said, I got one piece of advice for you. And I won't use the word that he used, but he said, you're going to need to learn how to be a real prick.
Really?
And that stuck with me. And I was like, well, I'd rather be kind of a lover than a fighter. Can't we all get along? And then I quickly realized that I'm in the minority. So you got to play the game the way the game is played, which is pretty brutal at times.
Well, it's obviously Monaco this weekend. Wish you huge luck there. But I'm sitting here at the Wynn in Las Vegas. Got a couple of McLaren's in the showroom right next to me. I know you have a big relationship here with the Wynn. You've got a lot of activation on the ground come the end of the year for the 22nd round of the championship. Formula One in America. You're an American California kid. 3 races in your home country. That was never on the cards when you were growing up and starting to race. It was a dream just to have one. We know why it's taken off, obviously, with Drive to Survive, but just talk about that momentum, the economic momentum, the what it means for you as McLaren, especially breaking into America.
Yeah, I'm pleasantly surprised, shocked at how big Formula One now is in America. It's awesome. It all started with Coda Austin, who built a phenomenal, proper Formula One circuit. So that kind of put us on the map. And then Drive to Survive. Now we have a new TV contract. Then we had Miami. Now we're going to have Vegas, which is going to be, I think, the biggest sporting event in the world next year, or this year, I should say. I can't think of anything that's going to be bigger. And so here we are with 3 Grand Prix. Got a couple, one north, one south in Canada and Mexico, and then Brazil not too far away. So if I look at America's, Formula One is just unbelievably strong. And I feel like we're just getting started because as popular as it is, we haven't had Las Vegas yet. And the TV contract's only 4 or 5 races old. So I think we have a lot of runway for further growth. And I couldn't be more excited because U.S. is, the most mature sports market in the world. And to have Formula One now be a major sport in America, I never thought I would see that. I'd hoped for it. I think we all did. But it is here and it's real.
Yeah, and of course, being optimistic, by the time you get here, you should be showing a lot more promise on track. I mean, I think you're going to be able, as street circuits do suit you, it seems, as well in certain situations. So, I mean, I walked out this morning early to go for a walk around, before many people are up, and I'm going, this is the track. I'm standing on the edge of the track. It kind of, we're used to, do you remember Birmingham Grand Prix? We've all driven in places that you never thought you were going to have a track. But standing here on the strip, I'm like, this is going to be spectacular. And obviously, I know that all the drivers are going to be everyone's going to be activating in every way. Meanwhile, Vegas is going to be carrying on, Zach. They're not shutting Vegas for business. Vegas is Vegas.
I'm waiting to see what driver makes the newspapers first.
Yeah, that'd be brilliant. Well, listen, I just saw this morning Lando revealing your new Triple Crown, his livery from Monaco. That was cool. Again, an example of transparency. Straight away, you've got your top driver, revealing the colors. That was just seeing in the background. I remember the McLaren GTR. It overtook me at 3 a.m. So I remember that with JJ. But to see the 3 cars having won the 3 biggest races, Indy, obviously, and Le Mans, and there you have them behind your new livery. You love that connection to the past, I guess.
I love our history, and those are the 3 coolest races in the world. And we're fortunate to have won them. So, at Indianapolis, where we're running 4 cars, we put 3 in those liveries. So a nod to Le Mans, Pato's in that car, a nod to Monaco, and the iconic livery there with Felix, and then Alex Rossi driving the 1974 Johnny Rutherford Papaya, winner, and then for Monaco, kind of bringing all of that together through design and coloration, and the fans have absolutely responded. And we're in the sport and entertainment business, and fans love to see that stuff, celebrate the past, tell the stories, and with all the new fans Formula One gives us a chance to kind of tell them about the McLaren history.
Yeah, connect the dots. Hey, Zak, thanks so much. Guess what? This is your first pole position of the year. Your pole position on Drive to Win. You were my first choice and my first guest. So thanks a lot, mate.
Awesome.
And thanks for your support.
Glad to be here.
And we'll see you it'll come around very quickly. See you at the end of the year.
No doubt. See you later.
See you, mate. Well, my next guest certainly knows his way around Formula One, especially the halls of McLaren, because he was there in the good old days, as they say. Stefan Johansson, he raced for McLaren and Ferrari, 103 Grand Prix with 12 podiums. And as all of you fans of modern-day Formula One know, that is a really tough thing to achieve. He also won the Sebring 12 Hours and the famous 24 Hours of Le Mans. He's now better known as one of the top driver managers in the business. And in fact, Scott Dixon, who's the 6-time IndyCar champion, is one of his top clients, as well as Felix Rosenqvist, who's on the grid at Indy in the top 10 this year, going for the Indy 500. So, Stefan, welcome to the show. Your resume is so long, mate. That's why you look so young. It's true, right?
There's no time to rest.
No time to rest. Well, thanks for joining us. This is the first show. I know you and I go back a long way and are great mates. And,
yes,
we were just joking before we got on air that, you're not just a driver manager now. You're one of probably the world's top automotive artists. And the next time we have you on the show, you got to show us some of your paintings. So definitely anyone watching, head over to Stefan's website and check it out. But you're a man that knows not having the Italian Grand Prix. I mean, it was for all the right reasons, but the emotions of the fans, the teams, every driver, every mechanic, every sponsor, every girlfriend and wife, they all want to go to the Italian Grand Prix, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Italy is really one of the foundation homes, I guess, for Formula One. I mean, it's been around. Monza is one, if not the oldest track on the calendar now, I think. And Imola obviously is not far behind, but it's the passion and it's just it's always great for a driver to race in Italy, and especially if you're a Ferrari driver, it takes it to a whole nother level.
Did you remember even now the first day you put on a red race suit in Italy? You must be elevated, like walk on water and stuff like that.
Yeah, so weirdly, Imola was actually my second race for Ferrari.
Oh.
I sort of called in last minute for the Portuguese Grand Prix, which was the 2 weeks earlier, and then Imola was the next one. And I almost won the race. I ran out of fuel on the last lap leading the race, and I'll never forget when I passed Elio De Angelis, which was one of my very closest friend, in fact, for the lead with about 5-6 laps to go. I literally could not hear the engine from the noise of the crowd. It was it was an incredible feeling, unbelievable sensation, yeah. And
one of those moments that you never lost sleep over, I'm sure, for years afterwards, right? So close. I mean, that was like the fairy tale story. Oh, God, mate.
Yeah, it is what it is. But of course.
Well, not bad after that anyway. All went pretty well. You probably have the most, before we talk about Monaco this weekend, you probably have one of those unique perspectives on having experienced what it was like to be a driver, one of the heydays of Formula One, as well as managing drivers now. How have the demands changed? Because obviously, most of the people watching this podcast, most of the new American fans of Formula One do so from the Drive to Survive era, but you literally came from the Drive to Survive era. Tell us a bit about that, because impending death was a part of the scene, unfortunately, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was certainly different from what it is today. But thankfully, I didn't come in. I missed the worst era, which was kind of the decade before I came into Formula One, the 60s and the 70s as well, when it was really bad. But I mean, I'd lost I guess, 4 or 5 really close friends during, my period in that time. So it was still, I mean, there were certain races where you kind of weren't sure whether you were going to come home after the weekend or not, because just the nature of the tracks and the way the cars were back then, so it was certainly a bit different than it is today.
I mean, thankfully, obviously, you see some of these shunts they have now and you go, just as someone like you that's experienced being inside the cockpit, you go to yourself, they're not walking away. The next thing is they're up waving at the crowd.
It's extraordinary now how far they've come on the safety aspect, both on the cars and the tracks also, maybe as much on the tracks as on the car safety. You got to be really, really unlucky, and it has to be kind of a freak accident almost to get hurt in an F1 car today.
Yeah, well,
which is great. I mean, that's
great.
It's that's the way it should be, of course.
Yeah. Well, I said all the wives and girlfriends wanted to, and team members wanted to go to Italy, but they also want to go to Monaco. Monaco is just, when there was rumors they might not renew the contract there, but a few years ago, the world just couldn't believe it. I mean, how do you not go to Monaco? How do you relate to the incredible importance of having this unique race that, to be honest, wouldn't be authorized from scratch now, would it?
No, never in a million years. I mean, they kind of live and survive on their reputation, I think, more than anything. But having said that, I mean, it's still probably the most important race on the calendar in terms of, just the commercial side of it. The sponsors love it, obviously, and a lot of the entertaining that really makes up the activation program for the sponsors and the stakeholders in the series it all happens in Monaco. So, never mind being a competitor. That's a whole different story. I mean, I think it's a lot better now than it were when we were doing it, because it was just a giant nightmare the whole weekend, really. The logistics and just getting around and the garages were like half a mile away from the pits. It was quite an ordeal that whole weekend. But the track is amazing. It's probably one of the more difficult tracks on the calendar even to this day. And as we know, qualifying is everything there. I mean, if you basically, unless there's a screw up of some sort, either by yourself or the team in the pit stops, you pretty much finish where you qualify. So it's crucial to be up front and qualify.
And the demands of the track probably has changed less almost than any other track on the calendar, really. I mean, everything is just as tight. They got one DRS zone, I think. I mean, it's which they trigger 2 corners before, which is quite unique as well. If you see that little map, I don't know if you can, but so 2 corners before they trigger it. Talk us through a little bit about driving Monaco, because it must stick in your mind even to this day, having to avoid the potholes, manhole covers and stuff. What was it? Is it as vibrant? Could you actually drive a lap now in your mind?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's like you said, the track is probably one of the few that really hasn't changed since they put the chicane in, at the harbor, or tightened the chicane, I should say, because there was a chicane, but it was just a blip and a downshift and then full throttle through again. But now it's obviously a very tight corner. But apart from that, it's pretty much all the same. And it is a incredibly difficult track to be precise. And the precision, if you add it up over the whole lap, makes a huge difference on the lap time.
Yeah.
So, if you're literally an inch off on some of the, like the flip-flap, through the harbor and all that, it just makes a huge difference on the lap time. So it is a very, very tricky place to get everything out of to unlock the track and to get most out of the car and yourself, obviously.
So looking to the weekend, who do you like for qualifying? Because obviously Leclerc has shown in the Ferrari, the cars is probably faster than anyone over 1 lap. But what about as drivers? We see Perez brilliant on street circuits. Do you think we always talk? I mean, the commentators often talk about some drivers suit street tracks. Do some drivers particularly suit Monaco, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. There are some drivers that seem to excel on these types of circuit. I personally actually used to love the street circuits too, because there's absolutely no margin for error. So you got to be super precise, smooth, consistent, you know, and yeah. So, you know, it's, you know, like every track, every car has a different preference for drivers, of course. But I suspect it'll be a Red Bull up front. Yeah. I'd be very surprised if there isn't.
I mean, that's what I was just thinking about it earlier. You've got, you know, I mean, I'd love to think the Ferrari with Leclerc could be on pole. I think you could see that. But the Red Bulls will go by somewhere, right? If Ferrari don't step on their own doodah and
yeah,
you know.
Well, I mean, if Leclerc can get pole and lead off the line, I think that may be their best chance this year to actually win a race. Because I said, I mean, we've seen so many races there where the driver behind is literally seconds faster, but he just can't get by. No. You just cannot get by. The only time really you can pass anyone there is on the first lap, maybe second lap. And it'll be a total surprise moment, you know, where you just send it and hope you're not hitting anyone. Yeah. You know, and that's it. And it'll be the surprise. So they literally would just have to, you know, open up and not turn because you're there already, you know. Yeah. But you can only do that on lap 1 or 2. For the rest of the race, forget it. There's no chance of that.
No, qualifying, and I think they're talking about might even be rain. And did you ever drive Monaco in the rain? I can't even imagine it. Yeah. Well,
that tends to shake things up a little bit, of course. But even so, you know, it's so in the Monaco track. The problem is there isn't like one straight that's just straight.
Yeah.
Because it's turning all the time. The pit straight is constantly turning. So there's really no obvious place where you, even with DRS, where you can just outbrake someone.
Yeah. I just had a thought. Do you think they have as much fun as you did? Drivers these days with social media?
Yeah.
I think they are.
I think
now,
they do.
They?
From what I hear, I think they do.
That's code for a lot of fun, everybody.
I think, you know, racing drivers, I mean, we're all free spirits, right? Yeah. I mean, you know, everybody's different. There's no fixed character or, you know, everybody's doing their own thing. But, you know, being a racing driver is a good life. Obviously, you live in the boyhood dream, you know, and if they're not having a good time, then I think there's something wrong with them.
They shouldn't be there, right? But talking about someone that's be there, before I let you go, you're a guy that had his Formula One career and then an amazingly successful sports car career backing it up. How much do you enjoy seeing Alonso? Just like, you know, when you get a young puppy to go alongside the older dog, suddenly the dog starts running around again. Alonso looks as though every minute of every Grand Prix weekend is having a blast, and the results are there. Especially someone in your position, do you look at it and go, "Good on him," because it's bloody brilliant?
No, it's great, you know. But I think Formula One in particular has had this. It always happens, you know, from time to time when you get a unicorn like Lewis, for example, when he came along. You know, he's very young and he was brilliant right out of the box. And now you got Max doing exactly the same, even younger, and, you know, I mean, with enormous amount of talent. So, of course, all the teamers, I think, we got to find the next 18-year-old, you know, and of course it doesn't happen that way. So, I mean, in Alonso's case, who's been fantastic since he started, I don't think that goes away necessarily, as long as you're motivated and you're fit and, you know, the hunger. And I mean, I know from my own point of view, and I mean, you know, the motivation, if you're in the top 3 on the time shot, you get very motivated very quickly, you know. So, I mean, that's never really a problem, I don't think, you know, and I'm really pleased for him, you know, and I think I'm pleased for Lawrence, who's an old friend, and Lance and the whole team, you know, that they're doing so well now. It's fantastic.
You're obviously going to be in Indy this weekend, right? Yeah. With your 2 boys right up there.
I've missed Monaco for the last 20 years now, I think. So, you know, since I was been involved with Scott and then Felix, of course. Yeah.
Indy, south of France, Monaco, Indiana. I'm not sure. It's a tough call.
You know.
That's so you don't get paid to go to Monaco, so you'll go to Indy. Yeah. And obviously, look what's happening here. I mean, I talked about it with Zak a minute ago. Just this extraordinary emergence of Formula One, resurgence of Formula One here. We're here at the Wynn in Vegas, ready for, in the build up to the big race at the end of the year. You're going to have to be here, right? I mean, I think it's going to be an epic happening.
Yeah, I mean, it's the obvious place for America to have a Grand Prix, obviously, and I think it's just going to be amazing, in every aspect of it. I mean, it's it's going to be exciting.
Yeah,
I hope the track will be a great track and the racing will be good as well. Then it will be kind of like the icing on the cake.
Perfect. Well, mate, listen, I hope we'll get you on the show again. Always fun talking to you. Let's get together soon.
Anytime.
And good luck to your guys this weekend. And thanks for being a part of the first episode.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
I always learn something when I talk to Stefan. Imagine having raced in Formula One, won some big races, as well as managing current day drivers. Talk about transcending and connecting the dots. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for joining me for the first episode of Drive to Win. This show means a lot to me for so many reasons, but as much as anything, it's about bringing the stories, connecting with this incredible sport that I'm so passionate about, and bringing it to you guys who are sitting at home and hopefully wanting to be even closer to the action. Now, obviously, as I said, the Formula One, the thread to the series is going to be one of the main story arcs, but it's also about how Formula One is evolving here in Las Vegas. As I mentioned, I'm here on the spot in a unique position to literally walk outside, and we'll be doing that, going and getting some video of how the paddock's coming together, what it's like. I mean, I think it'll be very exciting to see how they transition the streets of Las Vegas, which right now look pretty bumpy, into a Formula One grade circuit. So November 11th is the Concours. The website for the Concours will be going up over the next few days. That's LasVegasConcours.com. But don't forget, the Wynn Las Vegas is the epicenter of all the action that week into the Formula One. So forgive me if I just read this because my memory's not so good, but it's WynnLasVegas.com/experiences/F1. So go and check that out, and it'll give you all the latest on the packages, how you can get here, be a part of the action. And you don't need a special pass to walk through the Wynn and see the incredible cars. I mean, I can't tell you yet, but some of the pop-ups that are happening, some of the top drivers in the world are bringing their best game here, and it's all going to be happening within the four walls of the Wynn. So make sure, stay in touch on social media. If there's a storyline you want me to dig into, if there's a driver, believe me, I'm going to be trying to get to all the drivers. I think when the word gets out, maybe more of them will come on board, but I've got some really big guests coming up over the next couple of weeks. You should watch Monaco this weekend so we can talk about it next week. Thanks very much. Justin Bell here with Drive to Win from the Wynn Las Vegas.